Black Lagoon, and 2 sequels, and we've got Doug Jones here, and we've got an exciting panel here to start Sunday morning off. And good to go. Now welcome Doug Jones to the stage. Now this is exciting because you guys just witnessed the first time that these 2 legendary actors just met each other. So let's start things off here. We've got stretching generations of the type of work that you guys do from 1954 to currently right now. And it's just, I think the most fascinating part of this discussion is going to be your personal experiences, the changes, and the influences that you've had on each other and others on your work. And just, what does meeting Ricou and his work mean to yours, Doug? We can share.
This is quite a moment for me, Ricou. I was in the 1960s. I was watching your movie on Creatures from the Black Lagoon on TV. That was my second monster movie ever. My first was Boris Karloff as the Mummy. So my second horror movie ever, it wasn't even a horror movie. It was more of a tragic love story, I thought. And so you in the water is what gave me my love for water creatures. And then I almost have to tell you too, your creation of Flipper on TV also. Hello. Oh my God. A favorite TV series of mine also gave me a love for water creatures. The people in the show I didn't care about. That dolphin was my love. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Doug. I want to say that in watching your movie, Del Toro called me on the phone and said he wanted a picture. So I sent him one. And his secretary said, well, if you have any more projects, send them to me and I'll see what I can do with them. So I sent her a bunch. And your performance in the movie was incredible. And the makeup was just great. And I thought you did a marvelous job. And you swam better than I did.
That's not possible.
The movie I thought was wonderful, and I vote because I'm a director and all, and I voted for him as the best director and also as the best picture.
Your votes worked. Thank you.
Now there's only 2 things about it. They had the lady in the nude in the very opening of the movie, which I thought was wrong. They should have saved her for the end. And then when you went in the water with her and they'd been shooting at you, it implied that she was going to stay there with you. Well, I felt that it was better if you had swum her to the surface, because she's human, and let her go, and then you go down into the blue, and people will never know whether you lived or died. Anyway, that was my feeling.
I don't hate it.
But you did a great job, and I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That was actually my second time playing a water creature. I was also Abe Sapien in the Hellboy movies. And thank you. And in Hellboy 2, the Golden Army, they had a clip in Hellboy's bed chambers. They had a clip of the creature from the Black Lagoon playing on one of his TVs. He had several TVs going with Universal Monsters on all of them.
Right.
So you were in that as well. And when Guillermo del Toro talks about what inspired him to make The Shape of Water, he often says that it was that one image that stuck with him from his childhood watching the movie on TV in Mexico was when Julia Adams is on the surface of the water and you're underneath. We're doing that beautiful. It was not a guy in a suit. It was that creature for sure. and watching them swim like alongside each other, but without her knowing about it. he thought that was the most romantic image he'd ever seen. Instead of being terrifying like it was to most of us, to him it was so romantic, and he was just hoping they would end up together. So as the movie ended, he thought that was a tragic ending that needed to be rectified. So that's why he made the shape of water where the monster does get the girl.
And can you guys hear me all right? All right, cool. I'll go back to the mic though. But now, Doug, you're influenced by Ricou, most likely. Ricou, when you were making movies, where did you find your inspiration and how to, not just be a guy in a suit, but to become this character to so many people?
Money. That inspires anyone. I enjoyed making the creature movies, and I'll tell you a funny story. In the second movie, I got a call from the director, and he said, "Ricou, we're making another creature film." I said, "Hey, great." I said, "You want me to come to California and have an outfit built?" He said, "No, we're down in St. Augustine shooting the film in Marineland Studios." I said, "Well, how am I going to get a costume?" He said, "Well, the guy that we hired couldn't swim." In other words, he couldn't swim well enough to do what they thought the creature should do. So he said, "Come on down, we'll fix his suit to fit you." So I went down, and sure enough, over a period of a couple of days, they cut the suit down to fit me, and I was able to use it in the film.
And what from Ricou's work kind of spoke to you the most? You talk about that scene with the creature flying up to the woman. What else from those early movies inspired you to kind of what do you hone back to when you're playing a role like that?
Oh, it's the confidence it's the confidence. You're looking at something that woke up that way in that condition. He didn't put it on and have to get into character. He was a fish man, right? That's what I was watching. So that's anytime I go on film as any creature I've played over the years, it is I want to have that same reality, that same authenticity to those characters. So that takes a lot of prep work ahead of time, And your background, of course, you do so much underwater. You do lots of underwater photography. You've done second unit directing. It's like so. Ricou has such an artistic background that goes so wide and fans out so wide, way beyond rubber suits. That and Guillermo is the same way as a director, Del Toro. He doesn't get inspired by watching monster movies to make a monster movie. He gets inspired by watching old classic cinema and old musicals and that kind of thing. So as we broaden our artistic spectrum, that's what helps us play that specific character, I think. And for me, I watch the Hallmark Channel. I do. I don't you? I love a good feel-good Christmas movie with a happy ending. What's wrong with that? And so I can help. And sitcoms. I like to laugh, and I like musicals as well. So I tend to channel all that into the creatures that I play. So if there's any empathy you see on screen, it's inspired by a big, broad consumption of art. Yeah.
And I think another interesting aspect that I've often wondered about is I'd like you to each explain like a day on the set in 1954 on the Black Lagoon, and then you in 2017 or 16 when you were filming Shape of Water, like you each take a turn kind of explaining what your morning and your day was like, because that's a lot of time and dedication in that suit,
I know the outfit that I wore, it took me about 5 minutes to get into it, and about 5 minutes to get back out. The suit, I put my arms in and my feet in, legs in, and then they zip up the back, snap it closed, put the head on separate, the feet on separate, and the hands on separate. And it worked very fine, and I didn't have any problems. Oh, I had to wear lead weights, of course, because it was rubber and you couldn't sink. So I had lead chest plate, lead around my thighs, and lead around my ankles, so I could sink. But once I got underwater, I was kind of neutrally buoyant, and it worked out very well. But when I came out of the water, it was horrible. The lead was heavy, and I had to stand on shore But a funny thing happened. We shot in the wintertime. The water temperature was 71. The air temperature was 49. So it was pretty cool. And I'd come out and sit and wait for the rehearsal for the next dive. And the crew felt sorry for me because I'm shivering up there. And they came up and said, well, how would you like a shot of brandy? I said, sure. But the other people in the crew didn't know that one person had already given me brandy. So after about 5 or 6 shots of brandy, I had a drunk creature. Anyway. Oh, I wanted to say this. He put on his makeup, and it's incredible. It looks so real, and his swimming ability was wonderful. So it was great.
God. Well, I can't top that story, by the way. But yeah, but my getting ready process was, the difference between a suit and a makeup is what he just said. Slipping into something and zipping it up the back, that would be a suit. A makeup is where it's glued onto or painted onto your person. And the creature that I played in The Shape of Water, the amphibian man, was a combination of both. There was part slip-on, zip-up, and there was part glue down and attached to. So my process was 3 hours to get ready, as opposed to the 5 minutes. Gosh, I'm lucky. So, but my 3 hours was actually quite short and forgivable compared to the 7-hour makeup job I did for Abe Sapien in Hellboy. So, because that was much more of a glued down prosthetic pieces and much more body painting. So once I got ready and done, what changed now is I shot a lot of dry for wet, which I was sometimes not in the water. And so that was a major difference between then and now. And a lot of times I would have, they might have a dot or two on me for CG tracking because they animated my face in post-production. My eyes were just kind of glued in there into the mask and it kind of like this all day. So to get expression out of that, they could CG enhance with the blinking and the looking around, and it is flawless. And the CG has gotten so good, you think the people thought they were actually my eyes, but they were a little bit too wide. I'm just saying that I would have looked funny without the mask on. So that makes it different. And the dry for wet thing, the final scene in The Shape of Water was Eliza and I floating together as the camera pans back in this great wide underwater scape. And we were actually hanging from wires in hip harnesses on a dry soundstage filled with smoke with lighting effect rippling down from above. It gave it a very water-like look. They had fans blowing upward to make Sally Hawkins' hair and coat flap, and so in post-production they CG enhanced all of that, added some bubbles in, and we're underwater, right? So there's a big difference between that and that, for sure, yeah.
Before we turn to some audience questions, Doug, it's been a pretty big 2 years for you, and I'd be remiss not to bring up that Best Picture win. I mean, what does that mean to you? I mean, does that justify all the hard work and all the years spent, stuff like that? What does that mean to you as a person?
Well, that was actually, this was my second trip to the Oscars. The first time was 11 years ago when we were there with the Pan's Labyrinth film. Another Guillermo del Toro masterpiece. And getting to play the fawn and the pale man in that. Those artistic movies with monsters in them, between Pan's Labyrinth and The Shape of Water, those are the two films that are the high benchmarks in my career, where sci-fi, monster, a little bit of horror, a little bit of creaturey meets art that the Academy recognizes. And that's a rare combination. So that means the world to me that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences recognizes a movie with a monster on the cover as Best Picture, Best Director, Best Art Design, Best Musical Score, whatever. We were in 13 nominations. It was just ridiculous. So that's a happy day. It's a happy day, and it bodes well for the future. I hope for more monsters. Yes.
And Rico, kind of building off of that, did you ever think when you were filming Black Lagoon back in the 50s that a movie with this, with a monster sci-fi nature of this type could win accolades like that and 13 nominations at the Academy Awards? And I know you voted for them, but put yourself back in the 50s. Could you picture that?
No. I finished the movie, Creatures of Black Lagoon. I went home. And then when the movie came out, it was shown at my local theater.
Switch on?
Oh. There we go.
Sorry about that. Anyway, after the Creature movie was over, and I went home, I lived in Ocala, Florida at that time. The movie came out, and I went to the movie in Ocala, Florida, and I had to pay to get in. And I saw the movie, and I thought, well, it's pretty good. Good job. Went back home. And about 20 years later, I get a letter from a fan that said they wanted a picture sent to them. Well, I didn't have any pictures. So anyway, one of the fans sent me a picture. And so I had it duplicated, and I started sending out this one picture. And over a period of years that I've been doing that, I now have about 300 pictures, and we go to shows, and I'm able to sell them for money. But anyway, we enjoy the shows, and we're glad to be here at this one.
Another change between then and now, I think, is the fandom. Like a room like this would not have been filled back in the 50s, probably, right? I think that movies were made. The movie stars were glamorous people that were on posters, doing this, and the people who played creatures were forgotten. And even if you look at IMDb, it says you're uncredited in a couple of films, right? And that's a travesty, I think.
Well, I did the first movie, and then when we were ready to do the second movie, I said I'd like to get credit. Well, the two heads of the studio at Universal, Mr. Pratt and Mr. Morrow, I had a meeting with them, and they said, Rico, I'll promise you'll get a lot of publicity before the movie comes out. But we don't want to credit the creature because we want people to believe he's really a creature. And I said, well, I don't know. And they said, well, I'll prove it to you. He says, the next week, they're publishing a magazine called Popular Mechanics. And sure enough, they had a huge article about me in that show. And I thought, well, maybe they're going to live up to it. And that was all they ever did. I got a promise that the movie would someday be shown on television, and that I would get some money for each time it's shown. And it was shown, and I never got any money. So I called an attorney, and he checked on it with Universal, and he said they don't have any records of that. They had a fire. So there's no records of anything.
Well, that's the most creative excuse I've ever heard.
Right. Really.
There was a fire.
But anyway, I didn't get any more money, so.
Well, okay, now everybody line up his table after this panel. You understand? And that's another thing, the difference between then and now as well. When Pan's Labyrinth came out, that was the movie that turned the page for me with this kind of a thing. I had been the forgotten guy in the movie. I'd been the one that didn't get the press. I'd been the one that wasn't invited to the red carpet premieres and that kind of thing. So I finally hired myself a publicist and got on it and badgered the studio until they had to relent and let me be a part of that whole press machine. And come to find out, people were interested in hearing about who that guy was, who the actor was that played those parts. So now, thank heaven, it's snowballed into some face recognition where I do some press and people can marry this face with the creatures that I've played. So we've come a long way. Thank you so much for trailblazing that one.
You're welcome.
Let's turn it to you guys. Let's get a couple questions going. Anybody that wants to ask a question, if you don't mind walking up behind the projector here, just so we can get a good sound on you. Let's get a little nice line here. I trust you guys.
Hi, my name is Luna. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here to see both of you. Ricou, my youngest son, you are his absolute favorite, the creature from the Black Lagoon. He doesn't like anybody else in the entire movie. He just likes the creature. He's actually back there, but he's super, super shy. And you two share a birthday, and he's turning 14 on your birthday too.
My birthday is February 16, 1930. I'm an old man.
November. Oh, okay. Well, then they have it wrong on where I'm talking. Doug, oh my gosh, especially with Pan's Labyrinth. Every time I saw Alphana, I just started crying because you're just everything about him just exudes in you, and even when you were the Silver Surfer and the Pale Man actually gives my oldest boy such creepiness that whenever he sees it, he has to leave the room. And that's how you know it's dead on. And I like to joke around with him by putting eyes on my hands, and I'm like, I chase him around the house. But my son actually wants to start creating stuff of his own, and you two are such trailblazers, and I'm so appreciative that you're here and I can finally meet you.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much for that. I hear an awful lot myself about the makeup industry, and the creature creation industry has gotten so much more street cred and much more attention, especially with shows like Face Off and that kind of thing, where it's become more, the common folk can watch it at home. And it's inspired so many people to want to make drawings and start sculpting things out of clay and putting things on their own face. And I love seeing that transition. So God bless him and on his journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mo. I have a question for both of you. I'm also an actor, and we have like movement training at school. What kind of movement training did you do for like each of your characters that you played, as far as like the creature from the Black Lagoon and the amphibian man, or any other creature that you've played?
I got hired for the movie because of the way I swam. And the way I swam normally is the way the creature swam underwater. And I didn't have to learn anything. Anyway, it worked out very well.
So some of us are not born with it. If I'm doing an animal-man hybrid type thing, which I've done several over the years, whether it's a kangaroo or a fish or a lizard or whatever, I like to look at that element of nature. How does that creature move in nature, like whether it's a fish or a lizard or a kangaroo, and then incorporate that into my own. But he's also part man, so I have to kind of give him, find the posture, find things. So I often go to a dance studio and we work it out in the mirror from what I've read in the script and my meeting with the director, and then the creature effects makeup company will start doing test makeups and camera tests on you, and that's when you can get more information about, well, how much can I move in this suit or makeup that they're putting on me. So it's a multi-step process for me, for those of us who don't come by it naturally.
Hi, my name's Alicia. I just want to reflect and say thank you both for coming to our town, and I think that the pairing of this conversation is very relevant for putting a spotlight in this part of the entertainment industry. So I think that was just fantastically designed. I have a question for Doug. Knowing that like the first part of your career was doing Billy in Hocus Pocus, one of my favorite roles actually. Some people may not know that, but and like reflecting from there all the way to The Shape of Water, and kind of knowing that, like, how does it feel knowing that you kind of brought sexy back to water creatures?
Yeah, it brought sexy back. Sexy started right here. Thank you for that. Billy the Zombie in Hocus Pocus is what she mentioned. If you didn't, yes, that was me, and I loved playing him. And that was before zombies were cool too. Yeah, but it was a specific design to make him handsome and kind of the kind of zombie you could date. So I was happy to play that. And that was another example. That was we had our 25th anniversary just this year for Hocus Pocus, which is hard to believe I'm that old. Because I'm only 27. Weird, right? But getting to back then, again, the movie came out without a whole lot of fanfare for me personally. I was the guy in the rubber makeup, so therefore I didn't get any of the advertising attention. 25 years later now, though, with the career that has been built for me, I was invited to come to the TV special that we had to celebrate it on the Freeform channel with this face on stage and I'm holding a microphone. So that again was a complete full circle experience for me to see that. And when Guillermo offered me The Shape of Water Creature, that was my 6th film with him. So we've been through a lot together, and his TV show The Strain too. So that's 7 projects. So. When he offered this to me and told me that I was the romantic leading man of the movie, that changed everything. In a fish suit. So that's why with the sculpting of the suit that I wore was painstaking. It took them 2 years from start to finish, developing, repainting, resculpting. And I'll tell you, they centered around that ass for months, right? Because that poster shot of that perfect curve, I don't come in the room with that myself. I had the best ass in my life. I had to hand it back every day and say, thanks, it's wet.
We do have a little surprise before this question here. Any Star Trek fans in the audience? Right here, right? Perfect timing, a segue. Welcome to the stage, Sarah Mitich, Ariam from Star Trek Discovery. And we've gone through a billion things for Doug, but he's also on Star Trek Discovery, so what does it mean for you, Sarah, to be up here sharing the stage with these two, influences on you, very similar roles, a couple different generations of this type of work, and then we'll get back into questions. I swear I'll remember you.
My question's good.
Perfect timing, but...
Yeah. Being a part of the show is quite unbelievable. And being able to be up here with these amazing people is also incredible. Dougie is actually, he kind of totally took me under his wing. I'd never done prosthetics before or anything, and then I was so lucky to have one of the kings here with me, and everything from put olive oil on afterwards and nothing else, and all these little tips. It was great, and it's such an incredible thing what they could do with makeup and prosthetics and everything else, and the entire team on that show is incredible, and they take such good care of us, and their creativity is unreal, and so yeah, it's been a bit crazy, but it's awesome. Yeah.
So my question, which is really good for all 3 of you without reading it, because I've thought of all your characters as creatures, not monsters, and that's because all of you put things into it that bring out, if not the humanity, the reality of this being. Yet they're taking away some of your tools, right? They've changed your eyes, your face, so things that you learn to view. Well, you're a wonderful swimmer, but how do you learn to emote what you need to emote past the prosthetics? Is my question.
I didn't have to wear anything but the head, and it took about 2 seconds to put it on. So when I would breathe air, I would breathe through an air hose, and the air would go up into the head, into the top of the head. And before we go into a scene, the cameraman would give me a roll, and I would breathe in and breathe out and hyperventilate a little bit. And then when I got ready to go, I pressed down on top of the head to get rid of all the bubbles. But if you see the movie, you'll still see a little stream of bubbles coming out every now and then.
I feel like when it's kind of like as a human being we have 5 senses, and when one of those senses is taken away, like a blind or a deaf person, the other senses up the ante so they can take the brunt of what's missing, right? And I think so as Ricou was saying, without having facial expression, he used the rest of his body to emote what the creature was going through in that moment. I feel the same way. That's what I took my lead off of Ricou. That when something is missing, I have to like if I can't raise an eyebrow, I can tilt a head, I can lift a shoulder, right? So other things have to take the place of what that facial expression might be. So it's implied. Yeah, but thank you for asking. That's a good question.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just gonna piggyback off that, but yeah, it's pretty much that. I mean, I've only done it so far once, but I kind of had to create like a whole physical language of, you know, how does she move? And I mean, I come from ballet, so for me, Arium is very much like my core is always engaged and everything kind of like moves together instead of separately, if that makes any sense. So, but yeah, it's the same thing. That was actually, Dougie said it really well, of like the senses thing. Everything else kind of takes over and magnifies itself.
I just want to also say that Sarah's sitting here. In fact, I mentioned the Hallmark Channel earlier.
Oh my God.
No. She did a Hallmark Channel Christmas movie called The Nutcracker Christmas or something, right? Yeah, and she was a ballerina in it, and she was gorgeous. It was
Hi guys, my name's Roger. First of all, I want to thank the whole world for the perfect storm that's brought you together here. It's magic. It's a question for Ricou. I'm a longtime Creature fan, and I know in Revenge, you're one of the few people in Classic Universal Monsters who's in the Creature suit, and your face is on screen. You get some screen time in there. How'd that come about with you in the laboratory as yourself, and not the monster, the creature?
They didn't have enough actors. So they made me an actor.
Best answer ever.
No, it was fun scene to do, but I enjoyed it.
Well, it's really rare for any of the classic Creature characters to play dual roles in the movie, so.
Yeah, most people don't remember that.
Hi, I'm Todd. How's everybody? Good. I originally had a question, but now listening to everything, I've got a suggestion. I think this might be fun. So, we should make a sitcom, and Doug, you'll be the star, an aquatic creature, and Ricou, you can provide all the animals, the sea lions, the otters, and we'll call it Sea Life, and put it on TV. I think that would be. Should we do that?
If the network buys that, I'm in.
I'll write up a script. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Egypt. I don't know, it's just so odd being up here and like speaking to you because I was a super fan of like Ape Sapien from Hellboy. I have the weirdest crush on it. And I have like, no weird explanation for it. That fish man's hot. Okay, real quick. Starting out in this industry and being such like icons for this genre and just like this thing, would you have ever known that you would be such an impact on this in like the beginning of your careers? I mean, it's for anybody to answer.
Well, I didn't think it would ever happen. As I told, I think I said it before, I made the movie and went home, and about 20 years later, I get a letter from a fan who wants a picture.